Business of the day. And the business of the day is about our topic. And we have a panel of discussants on the high table who will be managing this aspect for us. We're talking about creating scholarship and sponsorship opportunities for the next generation of aviation professionals. And like this, the speaker, the representative of the DG said, there's a need for sponsorship. We need people to help us sponsor. How we want to go about it, what we can do, and things like that. Our panel is going to help us with that. And so I'd like to call on Tony Ukachukwu, who will be the moderator for this session, to handle this. I'm handing over the mic to him.
Good morning once again to everyone. Good morning to our high table, members of the high table. I really appreciate you this morning. Since they're already seated at the high table, I'll just grab my seat and sit somewhere here so that I can moderate the session. So please give me some seconds. Okay, just to give a little background, the topic for the session is creating scholarship and sponsorship opportunities for the next generation of aviation professionals. I'll just give a little background. We know there's a dearth and a gap in capacity building in Nigeria and Africa as a whole, even pre-pandemic, and the pandemic has even made it worse. A lot of people have left the sector, so there's an increasing gap of capacity, or the inadequate capacity of well-trained aviation professionals in the sector, which is supposed to give rise to influx of people. But again, there are basic challenges. I'm also vested in the capacity building area in the sector. And wherever I go across Africa, there is one thing that stands out. After people have been inspired to pursue a career in aviation, the question that comes back to us is, how do we get there? That's the basic question that people ask. You've inspired us, we've known about these glamorous careers. How do we get from aspiring to actually becoming aviation professionals? And most times, it's funding that's one of the key issues. And again, the aviation industry seems to be elitist. If you don't have a sponsor, or your father is not rich, or you don't have state sponsorship, it becomes a career that seems impossible. But I'm here to tell you today that it is not an impossible career. Your dreams are very valid. So without much ado, I'll just go to the panelists today to kind of shed more light on how we can tackle some of these challenges with regards to sponsorship and career building in the aviation space. So good morning, sirs. Welcome to this panel session. I'll start with you, Mr. Colcrick. Please tell us, I know you're also in the training sector, invested in training in the aviation industry. How can we tackle this challenge with regards to sponsorship?
Thank you, sir. So I'll just stand a bit so that everybody can see me. And standing on all protocols. My name is Colcrick. We've done all that, and I'm happy that we have a lot of Gen Z. If you are Gen Z, let's just aha. So they'll be able to relate with what I'm saying here. So not wasting too much time, I'm getting into it before I let my senior colleagues in the profession also do justice to it because of the experience that they also had. I was just thinking about how we could tackle this, and one of the things in the keynote address was the DG spoke about deliberate programs. So I was thinking, how do we tackle this sponsorship issue? That it's a little way that one person can really sponsor. It's also in a little way that probably you could have corporate sponsorship also. There's a little people can do with regards to that. But then, why don't you give someone the fishing stick and let him be able to fish himself? Are we getting somewhere? So I'm looking at how we can tie student loans to sponsorship, because we're looking at practical ways we can do this. So I came up with a couple of data that we could use. In the US, for instance, student loans are available, or student loans are available for over 13 million students in the US yearly. So I don't know if we have that figure. I'm sure if we have that figure, or maybe if we have a quarter of that figure in Nigeria, we may not be sitting here. Everybody that wants to be a pilot probably be in the air right now. Anyone that wants to be a cabin crew, or probably even if you want to advance your career from being a cabin crew, some people have dreams to do such. But what still ties us down is what finances. And so I looked at that payment loans. How many of us know that Barack Obama had student loans? Student loans, yes. And he did not stop. He ended up paying the student loans when he was 40, just before he became president. Why? Because it was easy for him to do so. So we're looking at ways that these student loans can be affordable, and the term of duration can be made very, very easy for anyone to pay. So I'll just give us a little example. For a CPL or for a PPL will cost you 3.5 million at Nigerian College of Aviation Technology. Maybe equivalent of, for those who will be doing helicopters and all that, maybe $70,000 equivalent if you will do that in the US. Now, do you believe that if you get a student loan, it's possible for you to pay that loan within 10 years, and you're paying interest of about 7%, and you're paying and now I'm using dollars, you're paying just about $754 per month. So equivalent of probably paying 3,500 naira thereabouts, or probably maybe 35,000 naira thereabouts, and I probably have good calculations per month for over 10 years. If you aspire to be a pilot, that's the basic license. Why? What makes it easy? They get into school, and there are different student plans for them to make use of. And they don't get to begin to pay these loans until 6 months after school. And that's looking at the US. 6 months after school, even in the UK, after they've gotten jobs. So over 10 years, easily, you could pay that. There is hope. Someone say there is hope.
There is hope.
Good. So for the US, for instance, they have federal student loans, and that's about $12,500 per year for direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and those are for undergraduates. So for a whole year, you have access to $12,500, meaning that you could pay that thing after you have finished school. Let's say your course is for 4 years. 6 months after, that's when you start paying, and it will not accrue interest until 6 months when you start paying. So I have direct subsidized, and I'm not going to waste too much time so that I can pass the mic to someone. So there are several loans, and so we need to find ways by which the government and also private sectors can come in to give loans. Now, I was just thinking, if you have an uncle and probably he's buoyant, sir, give me 3.5 million to do my PPL now. would he answer immediately? And maybe there are 2-3 of you that maybe one wants to be or has another friend and he knows he's buoyant. Okay, this one wants to do CPL. Cabin crew is about 600 something, 600 something thousand. Yes, sir.
Forgive me, sir. Let me quickly interject. I want us to bring it back home. A lot of us, I don't have access to these laws in US.
Yes.
So bringing it back home now, are there organizations or institutions that people can apply to access these kind of loans that you've just mentioned?
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. We're getting there. We're going to tie student loans to sponsorship. It will be easier to tell your uncle that, sir, I can pay this thing over 10 years and I'll be paying 3,500 naira, or 35,000 naira per month. Now, when I said there is hope, 2 weeks ago, what do you call it, Central by Jabimia and Jabimia Miller sponsored Nigerian student loans. So it's something we should applaud for anyway. And it would have passed the two, chambers of the House of Assembly. So one of the things, one of the aspects here in the bill states that after 2 years, you can when you have a student loan, after 2 years of NYC, you can begin to repay your student loan. That's one. Repayment comes directly. Repayment shall be direct deduction of 10% of the beneficiary's salary at the source by the employer. And there will be a bank called the Nigerian Education Bank. So these have been passed by the two chambers, and I'm sure that very soon it will be ratified into the act. So he asked me a question. Yes, there are. But the problem is that the tenure of payment is the issue. You're asking for 10 million naira student loan or 1 million, and you're asking them to pay within 4 months. How easy is that? Or how practical is that? So GTB does it, Access Bank does it, First Bank does it, but within 4 months. How practical is that? For someone who is not working, the tenure has to be elongated, and that's the beauty about the, what do you call it? This student loan bill repayment, and also the federal government also through this work, the student loan bill repayment would also be bringing this into action. So let me just.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to you because I still have some questions. Because I know that when organizations offer loan facilities, they tell you to go and be your grandmother's eye, So I'd like to know, so it's one thing to have loans and then accessibility. Sir, I want to come to you, sir. I used to be a cabin crew as well, and we will come for checks in the aircraft. They say we should check for the availability and the serviceability of the equipment, emergency equipment. Now, there might be loans. Now, how accessible are these loans? Someone might say, I have 10 million naira up for grant for loans for capacity building. To access this now is not a problem, but somebody tell you that the monies are sitting. So, sir, I know, first of all, I want to take you back to when you were the MD of FAN, if there were programs towards capacity building, and just fast forward it to how can we access these loans that are available, if really they are available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony. Let me also join my predecessor in standing before the audience. First and foremost, I would like to stand on the existing protocol established by the representative of the Director General of the Civil Aviation Authority. And secondly, Tony, before I respond to your question, I'd like to crave your indulgence. Let me just talk briefly about these events. The last 4 years, Mama J has invited me, but I haven't had the time to be here. In fact, last year when I saw Pesilva and I saw Tunde Adeliji, I said to myself, oh wow, 2023, I'm not going to miss it, because these gentlemen have just challenged me that it's important I'm here. Not to showcase myself, but to help the next generation of aviation professionals so that they can also grow to be what we are and possibly exceed us today. And I'm glad that Mama J is giving me the opportunity, because I'm going to be speaking extemporaneously. I'm not on the program, by the way. I was just coerced to be on the table. But I guess with the just short experience I have in this industry in the last 29, 30 years, I should be able to encourage every one of us. Now, before I answer this question, let's identify the key variables in the theme of this conference: inspiring the next generation. Okay, so when we talk about the next generation, these are the next generation of people we're talking to. He's just mentioned them Generation Z. But look, historically, this is not new. Those who came before us realized that, look, there will be a generation to come. And this generation will have to either catch up with them or they leave us behind in the way they do things. Because they are going to be generation that is driven by technology. So it's unique that we recognize that there is a next generation of people. And I'm so glad to be in the midst of this generation of people. Let me give you an example. Before 1997, Boeing Aircraft, called Boeing Company, had the 737s that were classic. I'm probably using some too much of big technical words, but I have a couple of my colleagues in the audience who will understand what I'm saying. For the young ones, don't worry, you will get to learn about that. Now, the classic were flown extensively for 3.5 decades, about 35, 40 years. But by 1992, Boeing said, look, Boeing 737-200, 727 were phasing out, 200, which was in fashion and was flown extensively, was becoming age. And so we have to develop next level. Take note, I said next level, not next generation. Next level of aircraft. And they came up with the next generation of aircraft. So by 1997, the first next generation of Boeing aircraft, Boeing 737-600 came out. So 200, 300, 500, 600, 500, up to 500 were classic in nature. But what they did was, before the next generation, they started remodeling the 737. So they changed the engine of 300 and 400 to what you call the CFM engines, from the regular engines or the JTD engines to the CFM engine. So the engine was bigger and more silent, not as noisy as the old 737-200 people knew. So you can begin to notice that, oh, something new is happening in the aircraft performance by the company, because the company is recognizing that, look, technology is the future of our existence and survival. And so by 1997, the first set of NGs came out, the next generation, and the 737-600 were rolled out, 700 were rolled out, 800 were rolled out. I remember in 2012, shortly after I left Federal Airport, Boeing came and said, look, we are marketing 737 MAX, which was the next level of the next generation airplane. But why did I make this story up for you to understand? Is that inevitably, next generation had to be developed. Next generation has to be encouraged. Now, how do we encourage them? Through scholarship and sponsorship. But he's just asked me a very crucial question, which we need to talk about. You see, when I was in FAN, because I came from the private sector, unfortunately for me, I was a CEO of an airline as well, Overland Airways. I was already running an airline, relating with pilots, my colleagues, engineers, dispatchers, cabin crew, on a day-to-day basis, 24/7. Sometimes I had sleepless nights. By the way, managing an airline is one of the most hectic business you can think of. And it becomes even more challenging if you're a station manager. Percival and Co will tell you, and also if you're managing an international airline operation, you almost have a sleepless night, because that airplane is probably doing 6, 7, 8 hours, and you are out there ensuring that those who departed from your station get to their destination. So the business generally is a very tough business. However, when I was in Overland Airways, we recognize training, we recognize sponsorship, and in particular, we also recognize the fact that it's important that we help new persons, new individuals to understand the business. So the business model we adopted in Overland Airways is the first part I'll share, then I'll come to the Federal Airport, is that we take fresh university graduates. And this didn't start with Overland, by the way. And I'm very glad. Like I said, I've got my colleagues here. Mesiva is here, and a couple of other persons. the compare, Madame Tulu is also my colleague. In the 90s, at ADC Airlines, we took just fresh graduates. So we wanted greenhorns that we could train. And I was privileged when I came back from Incat Zaria, after I had the initial grad school training. By the way, Benga Daramola, we will always remember him, and I have to mention him here. He was an ex-Whiskey Tango Nigerian Airways manager. He trained us in the grad school, and some of us were later chosen to go to Incat Zaria for our flight dispatcher course. Now, when I got back, I didn't join my colleague in the field. I was taken back to the headquarters. So I built aviation management from the office, but with so much hands-on in the field. And again, I'll keep talking to Priscilla because we have to relate and work with them in the field. The interesting thing is that because we recognize that we need to get fresh minds, greenhorns, and train them in the culture of not just the business, but the industry, doing things right first time and always, with safety in focus. We got these young minds and developed them. Many of them were sent on training. I remember my colleagues who were sent to Sheffield Aeronautics. I remember a few others who were sent to some other places. Were trained to develop. The organization sponsored these programs. Now, when I got to Overland Airways, it became a norm. I had a lot of training, and I owe my 2/3 of my training to Overland Airways. Not because I was CEO of the airline, I was Chief Operating Officer, so I was next to the CEO. But because imperatively, if you have to lead a group, you need to understand so much. So I went on so many training. I was at ATNS in South Africa, I was at Scandinavian in Sweden, I was at Dubai Aviation Academy. I went round and round attending training. And the gamut of this whole training developed me. Now, how do I pass that to the next generation? That was the question. So, when I got to the Federal Airport, one of the things I did was I called the General Manager of Public Affairs. I said, first of all, reportage of the business is very important. So let's sponsor our aviation news reporters. And a couple of us who are here today will testify to that. Tony, Wale, very many. Nosa is here. The Federal Airport Authority, during my tenure, never toyed with supporting the media agencies covering aviation, because it was seen that of necessity they need to understand. Without prejudice, we knew they already understand what the business is all about, what the industry is all about rather, but we need to reinforce that knowledge. Now, the airports continuously did this, and I gave kudos to my then General Manager of Public Affairs. Again, I would like to acknowledge that Mr. Olukunle. He did very well. He was one gentleman who came from the media. Incidentally, before I came on board, he was the public affairs. What do you call that? Your organization again? LAC. He was the chairman of LAC, and before I came to FAN, he was already in FAN, and I met him as acting GM, so he was confirmed during my tenure because I knew he was coming from a wealth of experience in the industry as well as a reporter. So, on the basis of that, we wrote on the fact that we have to sponsor a number of persons. And really, the records are there. The Federal Airport Authority, and I'm sure they are still doing that today, sponsored a number of persons from the airport school and from surrounding schools in the environment. It was mandatory that this list comes up every year, a panel reviews them, and I'm so pleased that some of those people we sponsored, I don't even know them, but when one or two of them saw me recently, they said, oh, I was in this secondary school when FAN sponsored us, and today I'm working with FAN. I'm in the operations department, I'm in aerodrome safety, and all that kind of thing. This is very necessary because, like we said, like the chairman of the moderator said, there's a gap in the manpower as we speak today. And if we don't try to close that gap, in the very near future, the industry will not, in fact, will experience what we call entropy. Now, a rider to all of this is this. I have also known some states that have sponsored. During my tenure, Ibom Airports, not Ibom Airline. So Akwa Ibom State Government, and I'd like to put it on record here as well, approached me and said, look, we want to build an airport, or we have actually started building an airport. And I said, I'm aware, of course, you wouldn't be building an airport without my approval through the Ministry of Aviation. So we are very much aware. So how could we help you? They now said, look, we want to train all our staff. We have employed people from our states and we want to train them. Again, because I recognize the fact that training, sponsorship, scholarship is very important. We educated the state government on the way to go and said it's important that you train these people. And the Federal Airport Training School trained over 100 candidates from Ibom airports. About 20% of those 100 candidates eventually were sponsored by the state government to go further in overseas training. That again is a pride to us. So those who are making things happen in that airport today, and by extension the airlines, were product of what the Federal Airport Authority did way back in 2009 and 2010 thereabouts. So this is key. Then within that period, I remember one of the state's governor in the northern state, precisely in Kano State then, and I'm not too sure if Jigawa was part of it, said, look, I've got about 90 candidates we want to send on training for flying. I mean, it was like, ooh, wow. For me, 90, I remember I was speaking with the governor then in Kano. He said, yes, I want to send them on training. I said, Your Excellency, this would be amazing. The industry will support you. And the then rector of the Nigerian Civil Aviation College of Technology, Captain Bayo Araba, said, look, we have to give all the support. Today, I think some of those flying in these airlines, both locally and internationally, were product of that state sponsorship for flying by the state government. I can cite on and on examples. The fact is that we must not stop those kind of sponsorship. Be it corporate sponsorship like he mentioned, Mr. Corporate mentioned, the DG recognized that it's inevitable, sponsorship has to be. Promotion of training is key in our industry. Training and training. And like it's always said, if you think training is expensive, you try an accident. We don't want accident. So no one is going to say training is expensive. We're going to budget for training. And every organization is encouraged to budget for training. As a matter of fact, even though it's not mandatory, but the economic regulation, there are relevant clauses in the economic regulation that shows that if you are showing your performance, you should be able to also show how often you have trained the personnel. Not just the technical personnel, but even the back-end personnel who are in other departments of the airline business. Because holistically, the airline only survives when all the various subunits or the business units of the airline business are exposed to training. And this training may be very expensive now, but sponsorship is the key. Corporate sponsorship, public sponsorship. Thankfully, the government is looking at it from the angle of legislation. If that legislation goes through, I read it a couple of weeks back, if it does go through and is passed by the National Assembly, it will become mandatory, not just for the state government, but even for multinationals who are exploiting resources from this country to train and to sponsor and train people in this industry. That is the way, and I'm sure another next decade, so to say, we will have a next set of generation of people who do not just understand this business, but know how to do it and sustain the business. Thank you.